Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks very much, Will. So in a little bit less than 2 weeks, schools right across this province of ours, including the schools that my daughters will be attending, will be reopening. And like parents in every corner of this province, I am deeply concerned about what we can expect to occur. We all hope for the very, very best, but I know there's a great deal of anxiety. And I mentioned this particularly to start this morning because my younger daughter, being under the age of 12, is not yet eligible to receive the vaccine. And she's, of course, not alone. There are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of kids across Ontario, again, going back to school shortly, who are not eligible to receive the vaccine. I'm starting with this point because it seems to me, with all of the discussion that we've had over the last number of weeks, in fact, I would say now more than months, about the need for mandates relating to vaccines in both healthcare and education, but also the vaccine certificate issue, that it's taking on a critical urgency. Now, you've all heard me say over the last couple of weeks in particular, it's time for us to put the partisanship aside. It's time for us to be collaborative on this. It's time for us to take a real Team Ontario approach. Yes, amongst the four main political parties and the four main political leaders, but also amongst that growing chorus of voices, that growing and strong consensus that's emerged here in Ontario within education, within healthcare, within the business community, within the municipal sector, in the post-secondary sector, where there are increasingly more and more voices that are saying we need a province-wide reliable vaccine certificate. We need to take a close look at mandates for vaccines in both healthcare and education. Of course, I strongly believe we need those mandates. We've needed them all the way through this process. And just this morning, we learned through media that Ontario's local chief medical officers of health have talked about producing their own, I guess, region by region or PHU, public health unit by public health unit vaccine certificates, possibly if Ontario doesn't move forward. We've seen certificates at a provincial level in British Columbia, Manitoba, Quebec. There is no good reason that we cannot move forward in a province-wide fashion with real leadership here in the province of Ontario. I have been consistently calling for this. I've been looking for a meeting to occur, first between Premier Ford and the three opposition leaders, secondly, between Premier Ford and three opposition leaders in that growing chorus of voices that we're hearing from every sector. And we haven't had the chance to sit down and have that conversation so far. So earlier today, I personally reached out to Doug Ford, Andrea Horwath, and Mike Schreiner to connect with them to talk about, again, that urgent need to move forward with a discussion, to see what that consensus looks like and feels like, to exchange ideas around best practices. I've also had the chance over the last number of hours, the last couple of days, to speak with many of our partners and stakeholders in education, in healthcare, in the business community, in the municipal sector. And there is a strong desire to work together in a strictly nonpartisan fashion, in a consensus building way, in a collaborative way. And I really believe, especially after the last 18 or 19 months that the people of Ontario have lived through, everything that we've endured, everything that we've had to sacrifice and suffer for, they really do want to see that Team Ontario approach. So I reached out to the other leaders. We have sent invitations out. I am calling for an urgent meeting to take place, a virtual but urgent meeting to take place, a summit, if you will, on vaccine certificates and mandates, to take place on Monday, August the 30th at 10 o'clock in the morning. I am really hoping that we can work together on this. This is not an Ontario Liberal meeting. It is not a Stephen Del Duca meeting that I'm calling for. It is a meeting for all of us to come together, to work on an agenda, to work on potential outcomes. I'm sincerely hopeful that Doug Ford, Andrea Horwath, Mike Schreiner, and all of the partners and stakeholders that we do have who feel so strongly about getting this right will be available to attend and will come with a genuine desire to see that progress that I know the people of Ontario want. So I wanted to share that news this morning. I won't stop on this issue. Again, I think we are well past the point of partisanship and the crass politics that sometimes, sadly, we all play. With schools coming back in less than 2 weeks, with kids like my younger daughter who will be vulnerable, who will be exposed because she's not eligible to receive the vaccine, we need to get this right. And we need to do it in a way that is nonpartisan, that is collaborative. That is what the people of Ontario expect and deserve. And that's what I'm pushing for hard on today. And again, I'm not going to stop on this. And I suspect there will only be more voices that will want to see this kind of meaningful, positive, forward-looking action taken. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, just a reminder to reporters on the line, if you could please raise your hand using the Zoom function or write to the chat and I will call on you for a question. And the first question is Steve Bacon from TVO.
Morning, Stephen. I know
Morning.
your announcement today relates to elementary and secondary, but I wonder if you have a view as to the post-secondary sector and whether you believe it can be fully open come next month.
Well, so I obviously, I hope that it will be. I hope that it can be. I know that we have a number of universities and colleges that have decided to embark on their own, I'll say, with respect to vaccine policies and the need for the certificate. So I'm really hoping campuses will be open. I don't have any kids that are attending post-secondary, but I have nieces who are. I have lots of friends who have kids who are. There is concern out there. I think, again, that's one of the reasons it's so important for us to have a uniform province-wide approach to dealing with this. Doesn't mean that I necessarily have all the answers, Steve. What it does mean, though, is whether we're talking about individual post-secondary institutions or Colleges Ontario or the Council of Ontario Universities, this is one of the reasons I really do believe this urgent summit for vaccine mandates and certificates that I'm calling for Monday morning at 10 o'clock is so critically important, so we can all be on the same page. One, because we actually want to produce an effective solution for dealing with the fourth wave of COVID. But number two, so we can give students on campuses and their families and those who work on campuses peace of mind about what to expect this fall.
And my follow-up is, based on everything you have seen and heard so far, are you confident that the post-secondary world is prepared for the fourth wave and can handle in-class instruction and fourth wave simultaneously?
So look, I've had the chance to see, of course, and even speak with some who are in leadership positions at colleges and universities. I think that they are working really, really hard to get it right. When they've not seen, I'll call it uniform action coming from the province of Ontario about how to approach this. A lot of them have decided to go out early. Seneca College is a good example. They're not alone to develop their own policies and their own approaches to how they're going to deal with on-campus instruction and on-campus activities. I think that was understandable given that vacuum of leadership that we do have right now. But I want us in this province, whether we're talking about post-sec or we're talking about the rest of healthcare, education, the business community, the municipal sector, I want us to all be on the same page. So there's no confusion, regardless of where you live in this province and regardless of how you might interact with any one of the sectors that I've just talked about, that there's no confusion. We are all playing with the same set of rules. We have that reliable province-wide standardized vaccine passport or certificate. We understand clearly what the mandates are and how we have to approach those. I think that kind of coherent and easy to understand approach is the very best way to make sure that we all deal with the fourth wave, and so that the disruption that it might cause is as minimal as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is Richard Southern from 680 News.
Hi, Stephen. Good morning.
Morning.
So this summit, this is on vaccine passports and vaccine mandates. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you hoping this is going to achieve? The health minister's office told me just yesterday, again, that they're not going down this road at all, Stephen.
Yeah, I know that's what they're saying. That is disappointing to hear. I've heard that through media. I know that it is, there seems to be a bit of a stubbornness or intransigence there. I don't quite understand it, but look, I'm not here this morning to level the partisan attacks that we are all used to seeing opposition leaders level against the government. I think with schools about to reopen, we have to move past that approach to this. I will tell you again, just through media reports this morning, hearing that the individual public health units that we have across Ontario might decide to do their own thing individually or perhaps collectively because they're not seeing province-wide leadership, for example, on a certificate. I applaud them for their courage if that's true and for their leadership, but it is disappointing to me that if they can see the writing on the wall, if the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, if the Council of Ontario Universities, and the list goes on from there, if every single organization that has such responsibility for these different sectors of our economy and our society can see that it is the right thing to do to have that reliable certificate, it seems to me that an urgent discussion on Monday, and I really hope that Doug Ford and the rest of the political leaders will be there with an open heart and an open mind. I'm hoping that it will have a positive impact, that it will nudge this issue across the finish line. So we'll get the same kind of certificate that the people of British Columbia and Quebec and even Manitoba are expecting to receive or will receive or have received here in the province of Ontario.
Stephen, two parts to the follow-up. First of all, do you think that if that regional certificate does happen with the regional health officers, do you think that would suffice if the premier doesn't want to do anything? And secondly, we haven't had, as media, a chance to ask the premier a question in 4 weeks, not since July 30th, as he held a news conference. Do you take any issue with that?
Well, look, on the first question, in the absence of province-wide leadership, I think any tool that's made available to the people of Ontario to keep all of us safe is a good thing. But I don't think this should be left to the 34 public health units to deal with on their own. I think they should be at the table. They're a critically important part of this conversation. But I think they're looking for, I'm looking for, people in this province are looking for leadership coming from Doug Ford for sure, but I think coming from all of us. So again, that's why I'm making the call in a nonpartisan collaborative fashion. Let's meet on Monday morning. Let's hash this out. Let's look at best practices and then figure out a way forward for the people of this province. The second thing, look, I understand that the premier hasn't been available to talk to media now in quite some time. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit strange, especially with case numbers going in the wrong direction, with a lot of questions about back to school being left unanswered by the premier and by his own team. I don't think that it's an ideal time with school only schools reopening so soon, and reports of the science table's latest modeling apparently going to emerge over the next number of days. I think it would be a really good idea for the premier to step up and be available to respond to media questions so the people of Ontario can see and hear what he's been up to and what the path is forward for this province. But I am sincerely hopeful that he will participate on Monday morning at 10 o'clock for this vaccine mandate and certificate summit that I'm calling for, that I believe others want to participate in as well. It's not meant to be gotcha. It's not about partisan politics. It's about collaboration. Team Ontario, let's get through this to the other side.
Okay, just a reminder to the reporters who have joined since we started, if you could just raise your hand using the Zoom function or write to the chat if you have a question, and I will call on you. Okay, Jessica Smith-Cross from Queen's Park Briefing.
Hi, Stephen. Sorry for tuning in late here. I'm just working on a story I was hoping you could weigh in on. Public Health Ontario says vaccinating kids under 12 will be critical in order for the province to achieve herd immunity. I was hoping you would share your thoughts on that, and also how you think the Ford government has reacted to information about not being able to achieve herd immunity without vaccinating children, which obviously isn't a possibility yet.
Yeah. So listen, as a father who's one of our daughters is under the age of 12, so she's not eligible to receive the vaccine just yet. I can tell all of you, my wife and I are eagerly anticipating the moment at which she will be eligible, and then those under the age of 12 will be eligible based on the testing and based on what we're going to hear from Health Canada and others. So we're eagerly looking forward to that. The information that I saw that came out from Public Health Ontario, I don't have a science background. I'm obviously not a doctor. It makes sense to me at a sort of everyday level, but it's also discouraging is not the right word, but it does help frame how much of a challenge we still have on our hands here in Ontario. So we are not through this yet. We should not be declaring a premature victory relating to COVID-19. Case numbers have started to climb and are moving in the wrong direction. We're about to see what Dr. Moore and others have suggested will be a difficult fall. This is one of the reasons that I keep coming back to the need for a clear understanding of what the mandates will be relating to vaccines for healthcare and education, and the need for that reliable province-wide vaccine certificate like they've developed and deployed in British Columbia and Quebec and in Manitoba. So, to hear that news, it's a bit sobering. It's understandable to me as a layperson, but it tells me we still have so much work to be done.
Thanks so much. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Okay, and there are no other questions on the line. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.